Hi everyone, Sweaty Hot Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the self-titled Corpo-Mente record. This is a French musical duo consisting of these fine musicians, who on this record bring on these fine musicians, and together they make music with a pretty interesting collection of influences. If you give this record a surface level listen, you're most likely going to pick up that this is pretty much a rock record, but upon closer inspection you should pick up that a lot of the sounds on this album are generated electronically. But there is a ton of organic acoustic instrumentation on this album as well, acoustic guitars and strings, even an accordion on one track. So already we have a fusion of rock music and electronic music on here, but also folk and neo-folk, classical music, and a touch of metal too that comes through on a few heavy guitar passages. And on top of these various musical styles, we have vocals from Miss Laure Prunenek, whose name I am most likely butchering. You might have caught her vocals before on these projects. And her voice is fantastic. Has a lot of pitch, volume, emotional conviction as well. Her singing is just great all around. And she's also a very versatile singer. Not only does she sound great over a lot of the rock-flavored guitar passages all over this record, but for a great deal of this album, she takes on a kind of operatic tone. I really can't say enough nice things about her singing on this record, and it helps that the music underneath her kind of takes this weird Fantasyland vibe to it. Like the singing on this record comes from this magical, mystical world, and this is the very elaborate music that comes from it. Unfortunately, on occasion, the music here can come off a little overproduced, a little squeaky clean, especially when it comes with the drum sounds, or like on moments like the loud wall of digitally distorted guitars on the track Arsalan, which sounded super bland. But this feeling of overproduction never really takes over the album entirely because the strings, the acoustic instrumentation, the accordion do provide enough of an organic feel that things are, yeah, okay, I feel like I'm listening to a full band. I actually feel like I'm listening to a performance, not just some synthetically sequenced and generated batch of sounds. Plus, of course, the vocals having a very human feel to them also help, especially as Laura shows an incredible amount of skill, but also the kinds of very intentional cracks and, in a way, just flaws in the strains in her vocals as well. But since this record pulls so much from the world of opera, it can be a bit of an overstatement at times, especially with just how theatrical it is. Oddly enough, though, this record doesn't really borrow that much from opera's tendency toward very large, grand, conceptual themes that carry out throughout the record. While I think that this band has a lot of talent when it comes to performance, and some of the writing on here is great, the instrumentation is arranged well, I don't really get anything out of these songs necessarily listening to them as an album. I just kind of feel like I'm liking each song just on its own merits as a song, not because I think one song on this record is actually enhancing the other in some kind of way. I'm not finding a whole lot of musical connections between these tracks, especially considering that many of these songs just kind of end or just deflate out of nowhere, and the song is just over, and then we're getting a gap of silence, and then we're on to the next track, which may or may not actually complement the song that came before it. So there are some endings on this record that do feel super duper effortless, and makes me, I don't know, just a little disappointed, because it seems like a lot of their musical ideas are so fantastic and so grand, but they're not really complemented with ambitious songwriting and structuring. However, still, there are quite a few highlights in the track listing here, like the very folky acoustic guitar passages and the wonderful vocal harmonies on the song Fia, which is beautiful, or the song Ort, which features the most blood-curdling vocal performance on the entire record. If there is any song that you go to first to try out to sort of just test the intensity and I guess just how explosive this band can be, make it this song. And the song DULCIN is fantastic as well, which is really musically a tearjerker for me, at least for the first half. And then in the second half, things get really heavy with some loud blaring guitars, and the track eventually has all of these digitally edited stuttering riffs, so you kind of get that fusion of rock, metal, and electronic music once again. And this song was actually one of the few instances where we get a track that segues or transitions into the next one nicely. The next track on here is actually a very nice palate cleanser, a little rock instrumental with some awesome strings weaved into it. A record like this that pulls on musical ideas that are so grand really could use just a large orchestration or an idea to pull all the songs together. The album itself has a fantastic flow, which is pointing towards some kind of climax or action or build-up or ascension, that the entire album itself, I mean, each song is good, but the entire album works towards some kind of payoff. I feel like that's the exact kind of thing that this sort of music would be complemented by greatly, but there's just really not that much in terms of a larger progression or flow that brings all these tracks together. It's just, some pretty good songs bringing together rock, metal, neo-folk, classical music, and opera. It's awesome to hear a band bring all of these musical ideas together so nicely and have them not clash in a really ugly, tacky way. I just think the record itself could have been more conceptual. That's all. Feeling a light to decent 7 on this thing. Transition! Have you given this record a listen? If you have, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Corpo-Mente, forever.